softly left her sister's side. She had edged gently toward her father, and now her hand found its way into his arm. Mr. Wentworth had folded up the Advertiser into a surprisingly small compass, and holding the roll with one hand, he earnestly clasped it with the other. Mr. Brand was looking at him, and yet, though Charlotte was so near, his eyes failed to meet her own. Gertrude watched her sister. "It is better not to speak of change," said Mr. Brand. "In one sense there is no change. There was something I desired, something I asked of you. I desire something still. I ask it of you." And he paused a moment. Mr. Wentworth looked bewildered. "I should like, in my ministerial capacity, to unite this young couple." Gertrude, watching her sister, saw Charlotte flushing intensely, and Mr. Wentworth felt her pressing upon his arm. "Heavenly powers!" murmured Mr. Wentworth, and it was the nearest approach to profanity he had ever made. "That is very nice, that is very handsome!" Felix exclaimed. "I don't understand," said Mr. Wentworth, though it was plain that everyone else did. "That is very beautiful, Mr. Brand," said Gertrude, emulating Felix. "I should like to marry you. It will give me great pleasure." "As Gertrude says, it's a beautiful idea," said Felix. Felix was smiling, but Mr. Brand was not even trying to. He himself treated his proposition very seriously. "I have thought of it, and I should like to do it," he affirmed. Charlotte, meanwhile, was staring with expanded eyes. Her imagination, as I have said, was not so rapid as her sister's, but now it had taken several little jumps. "Father," she murmured, "consent." Mr. Brand heard her. He looked away. Mr. Wentworth evidently had no imagination at all. "I have always thought," he began slowly, "that Gertrude's character required a special line of development." "Father," repeated Charlotte, "consent." Then, at last, Mr. Brand looked at her. Her father felt her leaning more heavily upon his folded arm than she had ever done before, and this, with a certain sweet faintness in her voice, made him wonder what was the matter. He looked down at her and saw the encounter of her gaze with the young theologian's, but even this told him nothing, and he continued to be bewildered. Nevertheless, "I consent," he said at last, "since Mr. Brand recommends it." "I should like to perform the ceremony very soon," observed Mr. Brand, with a sort of solemn simplicity. "Come, come, that's charming!" cried Felix profanely. Mr. Wentworth sank into his chair. "Doubtless when you understand it," he said, with a certain judicial asperity. Gertrude went to her sister and led her away, and Felix, having passed his arm into Mr. Brand's and stepped out of the long window with him, the old man was left sitting there in unillumined perplexity. Felix did no work that day. In the afternoon, with Gertrude, he got into one of the boats and floated about with idly dipping oars. They talked a good deal of Mr. Brand, though not exclusively. "That was a fine stroke," said Felix. "It was really heroic." Gertrude sat musing, with her eyes upon the ripples. "That was what he wanted to be. He wanted to do something fine." "He won't be comfortable till he has married us," said Felix. "So much the better." "He wanted to be magnanimous. He wanted to have a fine moral pleasure. I know him so well," Gertrude went on. Felix looked at her. She spoke slowly, gazing at the clear water. "He thought of it a great deal, night and day. He thought it would be beautiful. At last he made up his mind that it was his duty to do just that, nothing less than that. He felt exalted, he felt sublime. That's how he likes to feel. It is better for him than if I had listened to him." "It's better for me," smiled Felix. "But do you know, as regards the sacrifice, that I don't believe he admired you when this decision was taken quite so much as he had done a fortnight before?" "He never admired me. He admires Charlotte. He pitied me. I know him so well." "Well, then he didn't pity you so much." Gertrude looked at Felix a little, smiling. "You shouldn't permit yourself," she said, "to diminish the splendor of his action." "He admires Charlotte," she repeated. "That's capital," said Felix laughingly, and dipping his oars. I cannot say exactly to which member of Gertrude's phrase he alluded, but he dipped his oars again, and they kept floating about. Neither Felix nor his sister on that day was present at Mr. Wentworth's at the evening repast. The two occupants of the chalet dined together, and the young man informed his companion that his marriage was now an assured fact. Eugenia congratulated him, and replied that if he were as reasonable a husband as he had been on the whole a brother, his wife would have nothing to complain of. Felix looked at her a moment, smiling. "I hope," he said, "not to be thrown back on my reason." "It is very true," Eugenia rejoined, "that one's reason is dismally flat. It's a bed with the mattress removed." But the brother and sister, later in the evening, crossed over to the larger house, the Baroness desiring to compliment her prospective sister-in-law. They found the usual circle upon the piazza, with the exception of Clifford Wentworth and Lizzie Acton, and as every one stood up as usual to welcome the Baroness, Eugenia had an admiring audience for her compliment to Gertrude. Robert Acton stood on the edge of the piazza, leaning against one of the white columns, so that he found himself next to Eugenia while she acquitted herself of a neat little discourse of congratulation. "I shall be so glad to know you better," she said. "I have seen so much less of you than I should have liked. Naturally, now I see the reason why. You will love me a little, won't you? I think I may say I gain on being known." And terminating these observations with the softest cadence of her voice, the Baroness imprinted a sort of grand official kiss upon Gertrude's forehead. Increased familiarity had not, to Gertrude's imagination, diminished the mysterious impressiveness of Eugenia's personality, and she felt flattered and transported by this little ceremony. Robert Acton also seemed to admire it, as he admired so many of the gracious manifestations of Madame Münster's wit. They had the privilege of making him restless, and on this occasion he walked away, suddenly, with his hands in his pockets, and then came back and leaned against his column. Eugenia was now complimenting her uncle upon his daughter's engagement, and Mr. Wentworth was listening with his usual plain yet refined politeness. It is to be supposed that by this time his perception of the mutual relations of the young people who surrounded him had become more acute. But he still took the matter very seriously, and he was not at all exhilarated. "Felix will make her a good husband," said Eugenia. "He will be a charming companion. He has a great quality, indestructible gaiety." "You think that's a great quality?" asked the old man. Eugenia meditated, with her eyes upon his. "You think one gets tired of it, eh?" "I don't know that I am prepared to say that," said Mr. Wentworth. "Well, we will say, then, that it is tiresome for others, but delightful for one's self. A woman's husband, you know, is supposed to be her second self, so that, for Felix and Gertrude, gaiety will be a common property." "Gertrude was always very gay," said Mr. Wentworth. He was trying to follow this argument. Robert Acton took his hands out of his pockets and came a little nearer to the Baroness. "You say you gain by being known," he said. "One certainly gains by knowing you." "What have you gained?" asked Eugenia. "An immense amount of wisdom." "That's a questionable advantage for a man who was already so wise." Acton shook his head. "No, I was a great fool before I knew you." "And being a fool you made my acquaintance? You are very complimentary." "Let me keep it up," said Acton, laughing. "I hope for our pleasure that your brother's marriage will detain you." "Why should I stop for my brother's marriage when I would not stop for my own?" asked the Baroness. Why shouldn't you stop in either case, now that, as you say, you have dissolved